At 21, my sheltered past clashed with new emotions in college. Why can't I just be normal? I spiraled after a crush ghosted me, leading to self-harm threats for a response. Now in therapy, I'm terrified I won't return to college in August. Can I truly heal? I, a 21-year-old male, have been at my college for 4 semesters now. The first 3 were incredibly challenging as I navigated the transition from a sheltered and atypical adolescence. During this time, I also transitioned off multiple simultaneous medications that I had been taking for years, which were causing me harm rather than aiding me. I was unable to fully quit these medications until my 3rd semester. I was suffering so much that there were several cold turkey attempts in my earlier semesters, which my family would always discover. This, I believe, only scrambled my brain further. I was desperate to escape the feelings they imposed on me, although they eventually accepted my decision to not be on those medications. In my 4th semester, it appeared that everything was starting to turn around. I finally made one friend who is really cool, and I also began talking to a girl who, while ostensibly another friend, I actually had strong feelings for. What is significant is that due to my sheltered, over-medicated upbringing, this was my first genuine crush, despite being in college. However, it was unacceptable for me to keep interacting with her while presenting myself as a friend because she had a partner. I only found out about him 3 months into our conversations, but I could have made an effort to investigate by checking her Instagram or something. I didn't do that because she was just so cool, involved in fashion and photo shoots, which was overwhelming and made me feel insignificant. Nonetheless, the combination of the joy from my new friendship and the attention I received from the girl I shouldn't have been talking to gave me immense hope for the first time. I got into shape and lost a significant amount of weight, which was incredibly validating and felt really good, though I may have entered a problematic territory related to eating disorders, going from a BMI of around 29 to 20 in 4 months. I started running, which has become a major passion for me, and I actually consumed media occasionally. Often, I would avoid watching movies, television, or playing games because of a half-conscious feeling that they were intended for normal people, not for me, and that I was doing something wrong by engaging with it. I still experience similar feelings with social media platforms like Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, and even YouTube, which makes them stressful and overwhelming to use, placing me at odds with many members of my generation who enjoy spending time on such platforms. I sincerely wish I could participate without that shameful feeling. Above all, these experiences made me feel, for the first time, like I could keep up developmentally with all the cool college students around me, even despite my history of being emotionally unstable, before my medications left me numb for years, alongside significant anxiety, depression, and autism spectrum disorder. With the harmful medications fading from my mind and life appearing to progress positively, my emotions began to unlock for the first time in a very long while. Suddenly, in my 4th semester of college, I was struck by an explosion of new impulses and feelings. I wanted to look good and have a cool aesthetic. I wanted to laugh and create memories with friends who uplifted me. I wanted to cuddle and kiss a girl like my crush, and so on. I also found myself deeply moved by media. Even a kiss scene in a film struck me as beautiful. During this time, I began to think of myself as psychologically effeminate or androgynous, which I fortunately embrace as a cool aspect of my identity. It is important to mention one issue. My roommate, with whom I shared a tiny one-room dorm, was extremely disrespectful. He was negative and unpleasant, which hurt my soul to be around, and he would play League of Legends until at least 2 a.m. every night, being excessively loud. This made it difficult for me to sleep and relax. Given my fragile and blossoming state, I was too intimidated and overwhelmed to confront him, so I lived in an environment that did not feel safe for me. This meant that during my emotional awakening, I lacked a stable home base. The challenge with awakening emotionally is that the more I woke up, the more in contact I felt with past traumas. This all culminated in April 2024 when I attended a campus event at my college and fully processed for the first time all the groups of cool college students around me just hanging out with friends. I could feel they were filled with memories, which triggered a total breakdown, and I ended up staring at a wall for several hours. With my brain having lowered all of my dissociative defense mechanisms, I could finally see what I had been missing throughout my life since childhood, when I initially learned to dissociate and began taking medications. After this mental break, I am ashamed to admit that I stopped going into my room because I felt too anxious around my roommate, effectively living out of the second-floor student lounge of my residence hall for the remaining month of the semester. I essentially roamed around campus all day. I have a running watch that indicates I took about 20,000 to 30,000 steps daily during this period. I sporadically attended class enough that I did not fail anything, but other than that, I was kind of in a weird, highly dysregulated, almost sedated semi-fugue state. I also overindulged in food during this month, partly to feel something and partly as a form of subconscious self-punishment, resulting in rapid weight gain. I also ceased running during this time, which had previously supported my mental health. What is crucial is that immediately after my aforementioned mental breakdown, I reached out to my crush, whose attention meant more to me than anything in the world. I asked her if she could be someone I could talk to regarding my mental state and my newly rediscovered feelings of loneliness. Now, almost a year later, I realized that I placed her in a rather inappropriate and awkward position. However, while this is not an excuse, at that moment, my brain was completely flooded with rediscovered impulses for human connection and love, including platonic love, which clouded my judgment. I was solely focused on the pride I felt for realizing, for the first time, that it is okay to lean on others, and my blindness to that pride prevented me from considering whether I was reaching out to the right person. Ultimately, she did not open that text for 2 weeks. She was growing distant as she became aware of my feelings for her, which was inappropriate for me to entertain. Once she finally opened it, she apologized for the delay and said she would be someone I could talk to, but then she ghosted me. This left me in an emotional limbo that worsened my deteriorating mental state. However, I want to reiterate that it was unfair for me to make her my emotional anchor, even if she was the first person I fell for. After leaving at the end of the semester and returning home, I essentially barely moved out of my bed for a couple of months, all while remaining emotionally volatile. What is crucial is that I did not genuinely want to get better because I was so happy that my emotions had reactivated. Even when I was in anguish, I appreciated it because I no longer felt numb. I was in distress over how immature I felt. It seemed that everyone my age at college had experienced lives filled with memories and growth, while I remained incredibly sheltered and couldn't even drive at 20. My crush also became a symbol, so to speak, of what it meant to be human, unlike me, or so it felt. Eventually, because I was still fixated on this girl, I did something extremely harmful for which I welcome judgment. I texted her from a disposable number with a photo of a cut on my arm and claimed that if she did not respond, I would continue to hurt myself. She replied, stating that this was too much for her and expressed concern over my statements. Ultimately, after stabilizing a bit, I explained that I had feelings for her and should not have reached out. I informed her that the whirlwind of emotions led me to a mental breakdown, and she responded with remarkable grace. We both agreed to cease all interactions. During the second half of the summer, I discovered a newfound hope within myself. I resumed running, which greatly helped me, reverted to healthier eating patterns, lost the weight I had regained, and nearly started practicing for my driver's test, although I never acquired my license due to insufficient time from when I obtained my adult permit to my return to school. I felt genuinely optimistic. In the first 2 weeks, everything seemed to progress better than ever. I no longer had a terrible roommate. I hung out with my cool friend from the previous semester, not the girl with whom I had ceased contact, and I made new friends in my college's running club, even attending a live music event with them, which was amazing. I also attempted to see the college therapist, who I found to be much more helpful than I had anticipated. However, a similar narrative unfolded. My emotional reawakening also caused me to confront feelings of being a perpetually immature outlier, leading me to temporarily burden my friend by treating him like a therapist. Recognizing that I was heading in a similar direction, I decided to take the academic year off to focus on intensive mental health work. This required persuading my family, as I do not feel comfortable being emotionally open with them. A month after the beginning of my 5th semester, I left college, and a month after that, I entered residential treatment. It is worth mentioning that the month I spent at home between leaving college and going to residential was one of the worst periods of my life mentally. However, my family insisted on using a consultant to find the best treatment for me, which prolonged the entire process. I was in residential treatment for 3 months. I do acknowledge that I was fortunate to have that opportunity, but I am uncertain how beneficial the lockdown environment was for me. I think it was socially positive. While I did enjoy some connections there, the style of therapy didn't adequately address my core insecurity regarding feeling lesser or less developed than others my age. The focus seemed primarily behavioral. Honestly, being there was quite stressful and frightening, especially at the beginning. After residential, I immediately transitioned to a program again. I acknowledge I am blessed to have this opportunity, and I have now been here for 2 months. I have been fluctuating between emotional states and not stable enough to secure a job despite being expected to do so, having spent much of my time in bed. A significant development is that I have finally become open to the idea of medication again, and 2 weeks ago I started taking a mood stabilizer, lamotrigine. I feel optimistic about its subtle effects and the experiences of family members. However, I do not feel that I am on the path to healing from my deeply rooted feelings of inferiority that hinder my ability to function. I am genuinely afraid that even restating what I believe to be the appropriate medications this time, my brain will inhibit my emotions from resurfacing as they did before, albeit in a more regulated manner. I fear I will involuntarily descend into dissociation. I worry that I will not be able to return to college in August because that is where I still believe I can learn to be a member of society and where I can truly live alongside my peers. I wish my life had followed a normal trajectory. I want to fit in. I don't know, I just want to be virtually comforted for a while. Story 2. After my boyfriend M27 cheated on me F28 with his ex, he finally told her to fuck off yesterday. Now I'm left learning to trust him again as she continues to harass me. How do I rebuild our relationship and find peace with this betrayal? TLDR, I was betrayed by my boyfriend who cheated on me with his ex-girlfriend, and she then began to harass me. He finally managed to return all of her belongings and told her to leave him alone yesterday. Now, I am beginning the process of trying to learn to trust him again and would appreciate advice on that. I outlined in more detail the specific advice I need at the end of the last paragraph. Please do not respond with comments like "leave him." This is not about that. I have already made my decision to stay with him, but I am facing some difficulties for which I would greatly appreciate advice, preferably from someone who has experienced a similar situation or was the one who cheated. Thank you. This will be a lengthy read, so here we go. If anyone makes it through this, I am truly grateful for your time. Full story, he cheated on me with his ex-girlfriend. Do not ask me how, I sensed it coming. I felt that he had not fully ended things with her. When we met, I communicated that I was just coming out of a relationship and was still emotionally invested in someone else, yet he did not mention that he had just recently broken up with her as well. He claims he did, but I would have remembered that since I had experienced a similar situation before. In that instance, I was not cheated on but was left for the ex, which truly shattered my heart. Consequently, my instincts are heightened regarding these issues. Eventually, we discussed it because she was attempting to sabotage our relationship, and he did not grasp this at the time. I expressed my discomfort with her presence in our lives as she clearly did not respect the boundaries necessary for them to remain just friends. He assured me that he understood and would establish boundaries with her. He followed through, and I chose to let it go and trust him. We worked steadily on our relationship for months but faced some hardships. Unfortunately, instead of supporting one another, we began to take our frustrations out on each other. In December, I broke up with him. We did not communicate for 3 days but soon reconciled, spending Christmas and New Year's together and deciding to improve our relationship. To do this, we both recognized that we needed to work on ourselves individually. For my part, I committed to personal development. I started waking up earlier, exercising daily, eating healthily, and prioritizing my daily walks. I lost 12 kilograms in 2 months and genuinely felt so much better, inspired by the positive changes I saw in him as well. During this period, he informed me that he was working a lot and could not stay at my place. I refrained from going to his home because I kept discovering reminders of his ex, which was understandable since they lived together previously. However, we had been together for 8 or 9 months at that point, so I asked him to collect all her things and return them to her as they made me uncomfortable. He agreed, so I let it go. Also, my house is 2 blocks from his grandmother's house, whom he visits daily, making it more convenient for him to come to me anyway. I saw him almost every day but began to realize he was consistently leaving around 7 p.m. one day in February. When my old dog, who had been with me for 17 years, needed to be put down, I called my boyfriend. He came, called the veterinarian for me, stayed with me the entire time, and contacted the crematorium as well. Afterward, he went to have dinner with his grandmother and then returned to spend the night with me. I literally fell asleep crying on his shoulder as he held me. At around 3 a.m., I woke up to my dog barking and someone yelling outside. I went outside to check, and it was his ex-girlfriend standing at my fence, throwing rocks at me and screaming that she was his girlfriend, that I was a terrible person, and that they lived together, among other things. I have this all recorded. I woke him up and he was shocked and said, "Let me take her away from here." I eventually fell back asleep due to sheer exhaustion. He came by the next day to apologize and confessed that he had started seeing her again during the 3-day breakup. I swallowed my pride and let him speak. I did not react in anger, which was unexpected for both of us. That reaction was how I realized that I truly love him, as I responded with compassion instead of rage. I had not even realized that was possible. He repeatedly expressed confusion about why he had acted that way, explaining that he thought we would break up and that he did not feel good enough for me amidst his struggles, losing his business, dealing with his grandmother's illness, and feeling used by his father for financial support. He was fearful of being alone, and he explicitly stated he did not want to be with her or, God forbid, have her have his children. This is significant as we often discuss planning our future together, including marriage. He spoke fondly of his relationship with me compared to how he felt with her and started sobbing, expressing disbelief that he had ruined what we had for her. I listened quietly and asked about his next steps. He admitted to not knowing how to fix this or make things right. I suggested taking him to my therapist to help him gain some clarity, and he accepted. I hoped it would be beneficial and instructed him not to discuss the details of therapy with anyone. I also took time to reflect on my own behavior in our relationship and began to recognize my role in making him feel inadequate while he was doing so much for me. I had been depressed and had not treated him well for months, failing to appreciate him or the things he did for me. I realized I had taken him for granted, engrossed as I was in my own struggles. I do not claim to understand why he cheated, as I cannot fathom it, but I now see why he felt lonely, abandoned, and unappreciated in our relationship. I understand why he thought he was not good enough and felt I would leave him. I genuinely regret making him feel that way. The next time I saw him, I shared my realizations, and he began to cry, thanking me for my acknowledgement and affirming that I should never feel responsible for his actions, as it hurt him to think I believed that. He took full responsibility and was honest with himself. He then requested time to resolve his situation with her, which I initially agreed to, but soon after, his ex began attacking me online, calling, texting, and sending friends after me. The worst part is that I do not even know what she looks like, so I live in constant fear that she might confront me unexpectedly or send someone after me. I am genuinely frightened. During this time, she has also left numerous girlfriend-style comments on all his social media, refusing to accept that I am his girlfriend. He has repeatedly told her that I am his girlfriend, yet she has continued to contact me, asserting the same. Throughout this ordeal, I have not responded to her. I have remained silent and composed while allowing her to act out like a child. Now, nearly 2 months later, he finally returned the last of her belongings yesterday after weeks of her refusing to meet him or forcing him to wait when he arrived to drop them off. I can only imagine that she was trying to frustrate us. He described the experience as horrible and came to my house afterward for comfort, looking like a puppy that had just been kicked. I understand that this was difficult for him, as he finally closed a chapter that had been open for 4 years. They were a couple during the COVID-19 pandemic, even though he claimed he did not find her attractive at all. He told me they transitioned from being friends to a romantic relationship during COVID-19, resulting in a highly toxic on-and-off relationship for 3 years until he finally broke up with her a few months before meeting me. Honestly, I believe she thought it was just another phase in their tumultuous relationship, and upon realizing the relationship was over, she started sabotaging us and targeting me. Since he had not fully closed that chapter, he failed to reinforce appropriate boundaries. When she began to threaten me, I told him that what troubled me the most was that he would cheat on me with someone who possessed such a poor character. She is truly ugly inside and out, though I did not say that. I am shocked that he would hurt my feelings over someone like her. That truly affected me. I am nothing like her. I strive to be the best version of myself and have never been aggressive. In fact, I dislike confrontations. I do not mean to sound superficial, but I am a tall woman who works out daily, owns a business, a house, and motorcycles, and I am frequently approached to model for brands. I am on the verge of signing my first contract with an agency. I possess a higher level of education, fluently speak 3 languages, and am self-reflective, consistently trying to better myself. In contrast, she is clearly overweight, based on my observations that night, acts aggressively, disregards boundaries, and seems unable to control her ego, which indicates to me a lack of education. She resides with her parents, does not have a vehicle, and works a low-paying job. I apologize for stating it that way, but educated individuals do not behave or conduct themselves like her. This really impacted me. He implied that maybe I am the person he believes he deserves, which is why he acted the way he did after visiting my therapist, but I do not know. Some perspective on this situation would be appreciated if anyone can help make sense of it. I am returning to his house later today to bring some of my belongings so that I can spend more time there. I was genuinely excited until I checked his Instagram following and saw that he still follows her. He blocked her for a while when she would not stop leaving comments, but later decided he needed to talk to her to finish everything up and return her belongings. Having returned her things just the day before, I am hesitant to push the issue, as I know this has been emotionally taxing for him and he did this only for me. Even if he no longer wants a romantic relationship with her, I understand that he may try to keep her in his life as a friend because they have a long history together. I fully comprehend this. Nonetheless, it does not alter the fact that it makes me uncomfortable that she still has access to his, or rather our life. I am unsure how or when to address this with him, nor do I know how to overcome the trust issues that this situation has created for me. I am working diligently to avoid overthinking it, but I can feel my tension rising every time his phone beeps. I am actively avoiding glancing at his phone when he is beside me, fearful that her name might appear and hurt me again. Ultimately, I decided to remain with him because of all the positive attributes he possesses and to attempt to work through the one mistake he made together, but it is incredibly challenging for me. Please advise me on how to A. Ask him to please block her again so that we can retain our privacy from her without seeming intrusive, and B. How I can overcome the trust issues that this has created for me. I recognize that there is little he can do to assist me directly, as much of the healing and forgiving must occur within myself. I would greatly appreciate insight from anyone with experience. Story 3. Married to my best friend but trapped in a loveless union. I love him but I'm not in love, I confessed. After 3 years, I feel like a 1960s housewife longing for freedom. He insists I don't think that's a good idea, while I scream I want a divorce. Can our relationship survive? We married 3 years ago. Our anniversary is approaching quickly. I feel a bit overwhelmed because it seems like our relationship may be coming to an end now that I have shared my feelings with him, but I ask you to bear with me, please. We met during the COVID-19 pandemic. I was just beginning to adapt to being single after consistently being in relationships throughout my late teens and early 20s. From the age of 18 onwards, I was never single for more than a month at a time. I was an incredibly codependent person and found it difficult to enjoy my own company. The longest period I experienced being single was right before I met my now husband. I believe it lasted about 5 months or more. I was not searching for the one. I was simply having fun, finally enjoying my single life and realizing that I was content with myself while discovering who I was outside of a romantic relationship. I was happy. I relished my solitude and went out whenever I wanted, doing whatever I desired. I grew up in a religious environment, which meant I didn't have much of a teenage experience. No prom, no dating. I barely had friends because I was not allowed to associate with anyone who did not share my exact beliefs. I felt confined and was essentially made to think that I needed to marry to feel complete. Returning to the moment when I was finally happy as a single individual, I became active, established a fitness routine, and worked on improving my diet and sleep. I focused on self-improvement and grew to appreciate who I was. I have always been creative and always will be. I met this guy and did not fall in love immediately, but he was stable, incredibly sweet, cute, and kind. Over time, I definitely grew to love and care for him. 5 months later, we were living together. The pandemic accelerated this transition. We were tired of fearing we would get each other sick every time we met. At that time, I was living with my grandfather, who was at high risk, and it felt unfair to expose him. It was a massive mistake for several reasons I won't elaborate on, but our relationship endured. Throughout, he has expressed how strong we are and how we can overcome anything together. He has consistently been more confident about the strength of our relationship than I have been. 1 year in, we became engaged. I was excited. We were doing well and I was not overthinking how rapidly my life was changing. We started off strong, going to the gym regularly and eating at home while indulging in treats whenever we liked because we were young and capable of doing so. We were enjoying life. My father passed away a few months before our wedding. I experienced significant depression for the entire year but persevered because he wanted to marry. He wanted this. I did not want this. We married because I needed health insurance. I was experiencing medical issues and doctors would literally not see me without insurance. My job did not provide it. Getting married was the most cost-effective solution. There was no other option. He wanted to be married, so we went through with it. I detest being married. I loathe it. I feel trapped. It seems irrelevant whether I love him or not because I no longer have a choice. My choice is gone. I can love him or not and it doesn't matter. I feel completely trapped. This feeling intensifies and resentment follows. He stops trying. He gains a significant amount of weight. He does not look the same. He is not obese, but he has changed. He consistently consumes unhealthy food. He undermines my attempts to eat healthier. I plead with him to exercise with me, but he refuses. I ask him to engage in new and exciting activities in the bedroom, but he responds with indifference, trying something new a few times before defaulting back to the same routine. There is no foreplay, no kissing, no romance. I am not inherently a romantic person, but I wish for intimacy that feels like making love rather than just wanting to climax together. It feels mundane and monotonous, centered on his pleasure, while I am often an afterthought. He is incompetent with finances. He prefers to hoard his money as if he were a dragon instead of being financially savvy, saving, investing, or planning for retirement. He claims that having money spread around makes him anxious. I tell him to stop being foolish. He finally opens a savings account to silence me, but I discover 2 years later that he closed it soon after opening it and never mentioned it to me. I bring these issues and more up with him repeatedly. I feel like a broken record stuck in an endless loop. Every single day of my life is the same. He claims to hear me, he claims to listen to me, yet deliberately ignores my concerns, putting everything on hold until the next time the topic arises. This year, he has begun to make some effort. He engages in dirty talk in the bedroom. In 4 months, he has contributed $100 to his savings account. He eats a vegetable if I prepare it. We take long walks together. He claims these are his baby steps and that he is working on it. However, the sex is still unexciting. I do not find him attractive anymore because he refuses to take care of himself. We still do not engage in any significant exercise together, and he would prefer to spend 4 hours playing video games rather than being active with me. He constantly begs for junk food. Whenever he brings sweets home, I must either hide them from him or throw them away if I anticipate he won't resist them. Today, he truly annoyed me because I was asking him to assist me with the laundry, as I injured my hand severely yesterday, making it difficult to complete the task one-handed. He asked whether I would give him a chocolate bar like a toddler if he helped. I agreed to half of one. Between each article of clothing, he kept asking, "Give me the chocolate bar now." I finally yelled, "If you ask one more time, you will not receive anything." He finally went quiet. I retrieved the candy bar and he rushed for it like a goblin. I couldn't help but think, why am I with this man? A new, incredibly cheap fast food restaurant opened up within walking distance from us, and it has been detrimental to our health. He wants to go there daily, he would if I allowed it. He has no concept of the passage of time and thinks that 4 days between fast food meals is essentially a week. When I suggest we cut back to perhaps once a month, it feels like I have just sentenced him to death. He disregards my request and waits for moments when I am feeling low during depressive episodes, when I am hungry, tired, moody, or have had a difficult workday, because he knows he can break me down if he pushes hard enough. It is incredibly frustrating, and I have reached a point where I feel finished. I emotionally checked out of our relationship. I am tired of trying if this is his idea of effort. I constantly think about asking for a divorce. I recognize that this is not healthy, so I express my feelings to him. I lay everything out. I explain what makes me unhappy, being extremely specific. I tell him I believe we are great friends, but I do not think we make effective partners. I inform him that I want to separate. He responds, "I don't think that's a good idea." That is the extent of his contribution to this discussion. He does not believe that our breakup is a good idea. I pressed him, I begged him, I asked him to discuss it with me. I implore him to talk to me, just talk, say anything, just communicate with me. I just don't think it's a good idea to break up. I feel so frustrated and tired of him. However, here is the dilemma. He is a genuinely good man. He is kind and he is funny, honestly, he is hilarious. He makes me laugh every day. We share great chemistry and he is my best friend. We can watch anything and turn it into a comedy. We share many of the same hobbies. I enjoy being around him and spending time together, and overall, I find being with him more enjoyable than feeling frustrated by his actions and inactions. However, his inability to communicate or make me feel heard outweighs all the positives in our relationship. I know he does not want to break up, but I cannot fathom spending the rest of my life believing that my discomfort with certain behaviors, his junk food habits, unsatisfying intimacy, etc. should just be accepted. I refuse to live my life as a frustrated yet trapped 1960s housewife any longer. I love my husband, but I am beginning to realize I only love him as a friend. I truly do not know what to do. I am uncertain whether there is a way back from consistently thinking, "I want a divorce, I want a divorce, I want a divorce right now, I no longer desire to be married." This thought continually runs through my mind and I recognize it is unhealthy. Is there a way to resolve this? Is it even worth attempting? It has taken 5 years of begging for him to open a savings account, start walking more regularly, and say, "naughty boy," during intimacy. In 5 more years, I do not envision him returning to the man he once was or becoming significantly better than he is today. I just want to feel free again. I want to be single again. I want to solely rely on myself once more. I want only myself to let me down or to be responsible for my shortcomings, rather than feeling as though the person who is supposed to uplift me is instead holding me back. I love him immensely, but with each passing day it becomes harder to express it. It becomes increasingly difficult to kiss him, to hold him, and to look into his eyes. He is not the man I fell in love with anymore. Yet according to him, he grows more in love with me daily. According to him, our life is perfect. Hearing him speak this way is painful because it feels as though he blatantly disregards my evident dissatisfaction with our relationship. What actions can I take now? Is there a possibility of recovery from feeling this way? Can anything improve? Can I somehow persuade myself to be okay with my current situation? He wants me to attend therapy, believing it will help me. He claims he will pay for couples therapy if it will save us. However, when I suggest he should perhaps consider therapy for himself, he insists that he cannot afford it and thinks it is pointless anyway. He does not appear remotely interested in bettering himself. I am unsure how to convey this to him. I do not know what to do. I am feeling incredibly lost. I urgently need someone to provide guidance and support because I lack anyone in my life to turn to for this. I have no support system outside of him, and I truly need to know what steps to take. I feel utterly lost, broken, scared, and sad. Please help. Story 4. I was 24, drowning in unrequited love for my friend at work, even as I suspected her of cheating. You can't feel this way, she'd insist, but after her affair crumbled, my buried rage exploded. Now, a decade later, why do I still feel the echoes of anger? Over a decade ago, I began working 12-hour shifts with a girl who was 2 years older than I was. We became friends and got along very well, and I gradually got to know her boyfriend to some extent. After a year of knowing her, I realized that I had developed feelings for her. Internally, I panicked and started behaving differently around her. She noticed this change, but I dismissed her concerns. I had no intention of pursuing anything as she had a boyfriend. At this point, our friendship had changed, but we remained friends and continued to work together on those shifts, which consisted of 3 people. A few months later, a new employee joined us who was almost 10 years younger than she was. He was 18 when he began working with us. He was a very cool and friendly person, and we would hang out outside of work along with other coworkers. Eventually, it became clear that she and he had grown very close, and I suspected that she was having an affair with him. Rather than confronting them directly about it, I started subtly flirting with her to encourage them to be honest, which they did 2 to 3 weeks later. From that moment on, the tension between the 3 of us, which had begun due to my tactics, dissipated, and we continued to work together on those shifts, spending a lot of time together. Additionally, we would often go drinking together outside of work. I cannot recall the exact timeline, but their affair lasted approximately 14 months in total, and I was aware of it for most of that time. Now returning to my relationship with the girl. For the 18 to 19 months that I worked with her while knowing I had feelings for her, suppressing those feelings took its toll. In the beginning, I experienced some nervous energy around her, and she was quick to call me out on it. What ultimately happened was her repeatedly instructing me not to feel that way, and I would attempt to comply because if I didn't, she would ignore me for the rest of the day. Thus, I tried to bury my feelings and ignore them. Spoiler alert, that was not a good strategy. As I mentioned, we went out for drinks frequently. Usually it went well, but sometimes we would end up arguing. At this point, I honestly do not remember the subjects of our arguments. One time, close to the end of their affair, I lost my temper over something trivial, which was merely the final straw. I told her to leave me alone, that I had had enough of her, and as soon as I uttered those words, it felt as if all of the feelings I had suppressed surged forth at once, yet, by this point, they were negative. At that time, she had already accepted another job elsewhere, but we still had a few weeks left to work together. Back at work, I continued to feel intense anger towards her, and when she brought it up and pointed out the triviality of what had triggered my anger, I agreed with her and explained that I knew I wasn't really angry about that issue. I understood that my anger was irrational, but I still felt it, and I could not suppress it. When I say I snapped, I truly mean it. This was unlike any anger I had ever experienced before, nor like any anger I have felt since, despite having legitimate reasons to be angry in both the past and future. A brief side story, an example of my anger prior would be when I was inadvertently drugged by acquaintances who were attempting to drug my female friend. We had left her beer unattended at a small house party while we went to smoke, and upon our return, she handed it to me since we had decided to take a taxi home. Fortunately, it didn't fully kick in until after the taxi ride, so I was home by then, as it left me unable to move. I lay sideways on my bed with no control over my limbs, and it became increasingly difficult to breathe before I eventually passed out. Just experiencing that was harrowing enough. I could not imagine what my friend would have faced if I had returned to that party, as she would have been left with those so-called friends. An example of my anger afterwards occurred when I confronted a faculty member who was lying about a student sexually harassing his wife, simply because the student had criticized other students who were genuinely harassing girls, all because those students brought in substantial money. Thankfully, the individual was utterly foolish, as it could be proven that the student was in a different part of the country when the incident was supposed to have occurred, and the video evidence he presented showed someone who almost resembled the student being in that area at the time, which was later proven to be his guest. This meant he knew full well the student was innocent. Those were 2 instances when being angry was entirely justified, and I felt immense anger on both occasions. However, it paled in comparison to the irrational anger I directed towards this girl. It was the most primal energy I had ever felt, and that terrified me because I sensed a lack of control. The logical part of my mind recognized that my anger and hatred towards her were disproportionate. Yes, these had been a strange 2 years, but I experienced a constant longing to hurt her, which excuses nothing. I felt like I was losing control, like I could snap at any moment, so I made a conscious effort to distance myself from her in the last few weeks before she left for her new job. I feared for my mental state, and I thought it would be wise to make her afraid of me so she would steer clear of me after changing jobs. I was worried that I was losing my sanity and that, in the future, the rational part of my mind, which was restraining my urge to hurt her, would vanish, leading me to want her to distrust me. In the end, her last day came and passed. After I distanced myself from her, my anger gradually subsided and I regained a sense of control over myself. A few weeks later, I sent her a text message apologizing for how our relationship had ended, and she responded. She visited my workplace a few months later to talk, but since then I have not seen her again except for a few text conversations, none of which have occurred in the last 3 to 4 years. Additionally, I have refrained from pursuing a serious relationship since that time, as I do not trust myself after this experience. What if I entered into a serious relationship and eventually felt those same emotions again? No, thank you. Simultaneously, her affair began to deteriorate. After over a year of the relationship, the now 19-year-old was tired of concealing their connection. At this point, you might wonder about her boyfriend throughout all of this. How had she managed to keep her affair a secret? Well, he definitely had his suspicions, but she had redirected his suspicions towards me rather than the young man, meaning his inquiries referred to me, not to the person with whom she was actually involved. This allowed her to escape lying to him. Even though she was lying, it likely felt easier to deceive him indirectly. I do not know how my friendship with her appeared from the outside, but the boyfriend did not seem to believe that she and I had ever been intimate. He confronted us about it once but did not seem to accept our claim that we had never been involved. This entire situation was chaotic, so I am certain we were a disarray as well. Ultimately, she informed her boyfriend about her true affair, or so she claimed, along with mentioning that he believed she was involved with me instead of the younger man. To my knowledge, she and her boyfriend are still together nearly a decade later. Why am I only now expressing this, given that it occurred 9 to 11 years ago? A few months ago, I resigned from my job, feeling the need for at least a few months of rest, which I could afford. I have not utilized this break very wisely, since I still need to exercise more, quit smoking, etc. But it has still been pleasant, primarily serving as a good reset for my mental state amidst the work-related chaos I experienced over the last few years, in a completely different field than when I worked with her. That was until I remembered that I had never processed the anger I described, and I was reminded in the strangest way. During my break, I spent a lot of evenings playing relaxing video games with Twitch streaming in the background. Suddenly, the streamer I regularly watched began to remind me of her, more specifically, how her insistence that I hide my feelings eventually led to the breaking point I described earlier. This realization arose because a friendship the streamer had seemed to be deteriorating due to the male friend's feelings for her, even though she had a boyfriend. I listened to their argument, and an instant wave of all my anger returned, inexplicably directed at this streamer who had done nothing wrong to me. She was merely navigating a personal situation in a public space. At first, I did not understand why witnessing their conflict stirred such anger within me. I noticed some parallels to my own situation, but I was puzzled about why I was so emotionally invested in their disagreement. When this happened, I quickly ceased watching that streamer, but later became annoyed whenever I saw her in my follow list while watching someone else, leading me to unfollow her. Then I grew frustrated seeing her in the recommended sidebar beneath the live channels you follow, so earlier tonight, I blocked her to prevent her from appearing when she goes live. As I began to reflect on why hearing that argument had triggered such intense anger, I realized, or perhaps finally admitted to myself, that it was probably because I never genuinely worked through my anger towards the girl I worked with nearly a decade ago. This realization prompted me to write this post. While it may not provide any real solution, at the very least, I am getting it off my chest for now, and I can begin working towards finding a competent psychiatrist. Story 5. Engaged to a self-diagnosed sociopath, I faced constant emotional abuse while caring for his kids. "You don't have what it takes to be a mother," he said, as I spiraled into panic attacks. Now I'm left questioning my worth while he pursues a friend. Can I escape this nightmare? I am a 19-year-old female and my boyfriend is a 27-year-old male. This is a very lengthy post. Background: we met online and have been together since approximately 2023. Advice: I am seeking an unbiased opinion on how to proceed in my situation. I am engaged to a self-diagnosed sociopath and narcissist. I have been diagnosed, treated, and am currently in remission from borderline personality disorder and complex post-traumatic stress disorder. At the beginning of our relationship, I overlooked several red flags, such as his concealing 2 children from 2 previous relationships. Now he wants me to take full responsibility for them. I was instructed to care for them while he worked for several weeks at a time, believing he would assist me after work, but he merely slept. I underwent emergency jaw surgery and was unable to care for them due to the pain and the opioid medication I was taking. However, he told me to cope without help because he could not find a babysitter. The last time this happened, I begged him to help put the child to bed or at least purchase a toothbrush, but he refused, claiming he was tired. I cared for his child around the clock without any assistance for 2 consecutive weeks while attending full-time college, cooking, and cleaning for our 2 older roommates as well. I informed him that I could not continue like this and started to have a panic attack. These attacks can be severe, requiring me to take sedative medication for relief, while leaving the children with trusted roommates and family friends I have known for 10 years. My boyfriend ended our relationship, stating, "I don't care about them, you don't get breaks when you are a parent, you do not have what it takes to be a mother, taking care of 4-year-olds is easy," and so on. Whenever we argue, we attempt to communicate, but we do not make any progress and he suggests we should break up. When I leave, it is because we cannot resolve anything, and I do not feel safe since he continually harms me. I pack my belongings and depart. Then he creates new accounts to implore me to return, promising that things will be different. Whenever we fight, he admits to discussing it with all his friends, distorting the narrative and lying to make me appear bad in order to soothe his ego. After a significant fight where we attempted to address our issues, he disclosed that he had intentionally hurt and manipulated me for the past year. But when I began to tear up, he told me, "We are done. All you do is embarrass me, pretend you do not know me and find your way home." I threw my water at him, and he informed everyone that I was abusing him, omitting his actions that led to the incident of reactive abuse. That was the first time I had ever reacted in such a manner in my entire life. It was a culmination of years of mistreatment on his part. How can society accept years of abuse, but the moment I choose to defend myself, I face domestic charges? Recently, about a month ago, he was assigned a female coworker, which was acceptable until they became a bit close. I expressed my discomfort with them going out for drinks, but he proceeded anyway and lied about it. I informed him I would feel uneasy if she visited our home, and he blamed me, saying it was my fault for not being present that night and that he was lonely. They were lying in bed together after drinking and using marijuana watching Netflix, but he insisted there was no sexual contact. I do not know if I can trust him now, especially since he has admitted to cheating on every girlfriend he has ever had. I told him it was either me or her. He replied, "She fills a void in me that no one else can. Yes, I am attracted to her. If we continue to see each other, something will happen. Relationships do not last, but friendships do. I would rather be lonely and remain friends with her than deal with you. I have not worn my engagement ring since. He still insists on maintaining a female best friend and wishes to reconnect with the one he emotionally cheated on me with. While I was at home preparing dinner, he was going on dates with her to places he would never take me. I now understand that he has issues with infidelity, lust, and pornography after going through his phone, which of course backfired on me. He exclaimed, 'How dare you invade my privacy and disrespect my boundaries?' I am genuinely disgusted by what I discovered. I probably should not mention it online. I have a history of sexual trauma for which I am still in the process of pressing charges, complicating aspects of intimacy for me. He told me he treats me poorly because he is not having his male needs met. One night I decided to change myself forcefully. I did what he asked multiple times a day for the past week, even while crying, vomiting, hyperventilating, and struggling with panic attacks. He claimed that it turned him on. However, there has been no improvement on his part. We agreed on spending more quality time together and planned a date night for over a week. As soon as we arrived, he invited all his work friends, making me feel even less valued. About 2 weeks ago, we discussed how hurtful his words are, but we did not seem to make any progress. He claimed that all I do is keep everything he has said to me in my head. It is really difficult to forget those words, alongside his yelling and name-calling. I explained that we need to work on effective communication and problem-solving skills. We agreed to finally attend therapy. I organized everything regarding payment, location, transportation, insurance, and the appointment, but he canceled at the last moment. It is extremely difficult to leave him because I am still clinging to the person he was at the beginning, hoping that one day he will love me enough to be the man I deserve. I attempted to arrange my escape but realized that he saved my credit card information. He is no longer eligible for one as he is $20,000 in debt to pay for his child. I cannot even qualify for a room costing $400 a month because he damaged my credit score and refuses to pay it back. He stated I needed to get a job because we are experiencing financial difficulties, which is reasonable and understandable, except I will not be able to maintain my grades. I need at least a 90% average to qualify for my scholarships and government funding. Otherwise, I will be expelled from nursing school. When we began dating, he understood and accepted that he would not expect an 18-year-old to drive, afford a car, have an established career, improve her education, work full-time, attend university, earn $5,000 a month, cook and clean for 5 people, 3 of whom are aged 24, 26, and 27, and take care of children, but now he does. He claimed I am too costly to support, stating he pays $200 a month for me, which we can easily make together in 2 hours doing private contract work as a couple, and I am very grateful for his support. I wonder if 200 is truly breaking the bank compared to the 3,000 in alimony and rent coming out of his 5,000 monthly income. Now I feel like he uses this against me, saying, "Since I pay rent, I can invite any girl over whenever I want, and since I support you, I expect the world and more." I resent when he blames me for his financial difficulties or utilizes things against me. In the initial months of our relationship, he treated me like a queen. He listened to me, never called me names or raised his voice, took me on dates, allowed me to cry on his shoulder, and spoke very highly of me. He made me feel special, loved, and cared for unconditionally. I love him dearly and I want to marry this man. Please, what would you do? Have you ever experienced something similar?